My name is Robert. Thank you for being here as we continue the discussion about liberating Africa or having policies that are working for Africans. Today we're going to be talking about the free trade agreement, which the discussions are going to be kicking off in a few days. And this is the agreement, a treaty that is going to be between the US and Kenya. And this presentation is to show why it's not good for us and why treaties like this are not good for Africa, and to offer alternatives on how to approach the things that we seek to get from some of these treaties. Free trade agreement obviously is going to encourage a ton of US companies to be able to be doing business or to trade their goods manufactured somewhere else in Africa, in Kenya. And as the president said, that we're going to be the first guinea pigs. And I don't know how you can use guinea pig in a situation that is positive. So there is understanding that it may actually not be good for us. And treaties like this, I think the best way to look at a free trade agreement is like the one that was ratified by Kenya in 2018, called Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, where 90% of all goods trading within that zone are going to be exempted from tariff. Obviously, there are sticking points like the rule of origin that need to be worked on. But the challenge right there is that you do not have these treaties being signed by African countries under their own encouragement. They do not initiate them. It's being midwifed by others outside of Africa, others who are going to be benefiting from these treaties. Like Corporate Council on Africa, obviously last week they had a meeting where the president of Ghana and president of Kenya made a presentation, and obviously they are cheering for this agreement, both African Continental Free Trade Agreement and this one, Free Trade Agreement, where they're making a case that is good for Africa. I feel that if there is anybody who need to say what is good for Africa, is Africans themselves. And so when we are having marriages arranged by the florist, the caterer, the wedding photographer, and the wedding DJ, the advice cannot be good for the people who are getting married. It's for the people who are going to be benefiting from that. That's what we need to realize. Why it is not going to, why it's not good for Africa and why it's not good for Kenya is that in an age, a digital age, where comparative and competitive advantage can be transferred to other countries, even when it has the appearance of being accrued by the hosting country, we have to be woke. This is where we are having companies, we're inviting companies to come and trade fast-moving consumer goods. But those things or products are not going to be made necessarily in Africa. That might be the carrot that we are running after. But if you have a company that has set up production factories in Morocco, Egypt, and South Africa, for the most part, they're not pushing to create more factories in other places. It does not make economies of scale. They'll be producing in wherever they have made the investment, and they're looking for freer way, more open channels to be able to reach customers. And therefore, in fact, these treaties, what they're going to do is make it harder for other factories or for people who want to invest in production in Africa to do business, because they can overwhelm, through these treaties, they can overwhelm the small trader or the small factories that are coming up, because they have the power, the investments to be able to do that. And that's what we have to realize. So in this situation, when we say that it's not good for Africa, there is accusation, obviously, of being protectionist. But we have to look at countries like China, where Twitter is not allowed or where Facebook is not allowed. And they have their own apps like social media platform like Weibo. Why? Because they understand when you allow other countries to come and do a certain business, you're literally transferring wealth out of that country. And so the encouragement, therefore, is for China to come up with their own internal social platforms, and they have come up with their own production capacity. And that's what we need to be able to realize, that when we are accruing this from other people, from our GDP, we look like we are doing well, but we've created channels for our wealth to leave our countries, and we are actually going to be poorer for it. And especially when you consider that most of this trade that is being pushed is from fast-moving consumer goods. And so we are targeting people who live hand to mouth, and this is not going to encourage creation of jobs. So how do we do it? The alternatives is very simple, is making or structuring our economy like the way Japan or South Korea has structured the economy in what they call keiretsu in Japan or jaibo in South Korea. And this is where you have deposit-taking banks or SACCOs in case of Kenya, where you have these financial institutions create industries because they can be able to utilize money. It may be inefficient, but this is how you finance production that is in-house. But then you might say, if we do this, and actually also diaspora is also a source of income that need to be able to create these factories within Kenya and within Africa, African diaspora. Don't just spend money in idle asset, but create factories where we are able to make these things. But you might say, if we create these factories, where will skills come from? The skills will come from the African diaspora. These are people who work in the same companies as the ones who are pushing, or these companies are coming to Africa. This is where the African diaspora works in. So we need to do again what China has done, that the Chinese diaspora or the Chinese student is trained in, let's say, America, and he goes back to China and takes charge of production or goes into the economy to be able to help transfer of the skills that they have learned elsewhere in the world, and they use that to be able to create wealth and trade within China. And that's what we need to, but I feel like we have a leadership that has a fear of empowerment. It feels like we want to keep people on bed sitters. Probably it's easier to govern people who are poor than to command the respect of a rich nation. And for us to be able to do this, we need to come up with creative ways of incentivizing the African diaspora so that they can be able to come back and transfer the skills that they have learned abroad to the Kenyan, as opposed to pegging or betting on others who are conflicted, and the conflict cannot be overemphasized. It's easier to get that transfer of skills from the Africans themselves, and these are the channels that we need to create to be able to encourage production that is truly African and that is going to truly work for Africa. This is why free trade agreement is not going to work for us, and treaties like Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement are not going to work for us. And if you you are in places where this law or this suggestion is going to become law, kindly please be informed and know that it's not going to work for us, and the alternatives for us to be able to pursue to create the same jobs and the same wealth. Otherwise, we'll be creating jobs and opportunities for others, while children are going to remain destitute, poor in their masses. And let's remember they're graduates. We just need 1 or 2 years of transferring some of these skills, and we make our soap, we make our toothpaste, we make our clothes, we make our shoes, we make our furniture, and we take off on the second year. It is easy. We just need to be to look at it from not what I'm going to accumulate as an individual, but from how the whole nation is going to be able to benefit. And that's what we need to realize. In short, free trade agreements are going to be expatriating our wealth, and the only way to be able to change that is to have truly African manufacturing bases that are financed by Africans, whether that's through SACCOs or our truly local banks, or the diaspora instead of investing in idle asset. That's what is going to help us to be able to empower and liberate Africa from treaties that can only enslave us, and there is no exaggerating this. They're not going to work for us. They cannot work for us. I expound this on the book 5 Fingers that is newly released actually this week, and kindly have a look at that. It talks about, I dive deep into how we need to manufacture and how we need to finance and how we don't need to depend on debt or even aid to be able to manufacture in Africa. And the easiest way to transfer some of these skills, all these topics are covered in this book. Get yourself a copy. Let's liberate Africa. Thank you.